recording this presentation now. Sorry for the technical difficulties. But again, we did our intros. Today we're going to talk about the on-site energy manager role, the program benefits. We're going to provide the information that was updated last month for the multifamily updates. Again, specifically talking about the multifamily sector. When we are discussing these updates today, and when we're talking about the OsEM program, we're going to talk about Attachment A, the applicant info and certification, as well as Attachment B, the on-site energy manager concept, Attachment C, the scope of work requirements, and Attachment D, the example budget template. Please note that there is a Q&A feature. There's also a chat feature, so if you do have questions, we do ask that you please drop them in the Q&A, and we will do our best to get to them today. And anything that we are not able to get to today, we will make sure to include in a Q&A that will be ready for everyone after this presentation. So the OsEM, the energy manager role, excuse me. The goal of this role is to help businesses achieve leaner operations. Just to share, the energy managers are responsible for creating efficient processes that decrease cost and waste. The goal of this program is to ensure that buildings and building staff, building portfolios have that personal support that they need in order to improve their building operations and increase energy efficiency and carbon reduction in their buildings. That will go through with assisting in lowering operational costs and reducing maintenance and time, and creating comfortable and safe areas for buildings and their tenants within the multifamily world. Again, to share what we were talking about today is that NYSERDA does offer an OsEM program with a cost share for industrial, commercial, and multifamily facilities or buildings to hire a dedicated full-time or part-time on-site energy manager. Again, just to clarify that we are focusing on the multifamily sector within the pool this afternoon. But again, to just share that industrial and commercial projects are also able to participate in the OsEM program. And projects may include operations and maintenance improvements, energy efficiency upgrades, and water saving improvements, and more. So some of the benefits that the OsEM can offer. Focusing again on a greater understanding of existing utility use, really the point person to dive in and ensure that buildings and portfolios understand the utility usage within their buildings or their portfolio to help increase and improve energy cost savings, to reduce carbon footprints of buildings within the multifamily sector, the energy project management support, and to improve public perception, to again just ensure that the buildings are as efficient as possible, helping to achieve green product labeling and influence changes in company culture and philosophy. This is a 1 to 2 year commitment, but the goal is that the skills that this person will have and the resources that they come up with will be tools that the building and the portfolio can use beyond the engagement of this program, which will help with preparation for future growth and allow others to focus on their primary job duties, particularly any buildings that are strapped for resources. We're hoping that this will provide a good source of support for those buildings and pursuit of outside funding sources for energy projects. Excuse me. I'll pass it along to Mira to discuss the PON multifamily updates.
Thanks, Maria. So as you may know, multifamily was not previously, or was very briefly previously eligible for OsEM, but this is sort of a presentation to let everybody know that you can now submit multifamily properties. They are eligible to participate as a building or a portfolio. Another thing to note is that it is 100% cost share for affordable, and there is actually a limited amount of funding available to some multifamily affordable properties that are non-SPC paying customers. And then any market rate projects would be a 75% cost share. Affordability verification would be required for applicants to be eligible for the 100% cost share. And I believe Maria will talk about that again in a moment here. The application will be submitted via email, not through Salesforce. I know some of our programs are using Salesforce, but for this program, the applications will be accepted via email still. And then the minimum time commitment would be 20 hours per week for 1 year. And the maximum time that you could request would be a commitment of 40 hours per week for 4 years. And then you'd want to have your application and supporting attachments that are updated for the OsEM multifamily program when you submit. I think I'll pass it back to Maria for this next slide.
Thanks, Mira. Just to focus on the affordability verification, as Mira shared, the current cost share for affordable multifamily properties and projects is 100% cost share. So what we are keeping the current definition within NYSERDA programs, if you have familiarity with affordability for our low carbon pathways program or for our Flex Tech technical assistance program. This is the same definition and the same documentation, but just to ensure that everyone is aware, affordability is defined as projects in which at least 25% of the units are or expected to be occupied by households earning not more than 80% of the area or state median income, whichever is higher. Affordability multifamily verification documents can be found on the website that is listed here. Again, we will be sharing out this deck after this presentation to ensure that everyone has this. There are two ways that buildings or portfolios can verify affordability. One is the proxy documentation, which again is the same as it is within the Flex Tech and the Low Carbon Pathways program. To the right, there's a screenshot of some of the documents. These are documents from regulatory agencies, HGC, HCR, HPD as examples. And again, just ensuring that buildings have that information available in order to be eligible for the 100% cost share for affordable projects. Or there is the rent roll. Just as a reminder, the rent roll must be on the NYSERDA rent roll template in order to be accepted for that. As a reminder, because this is not going through Salesforce, as Mira shared, this is going to be submitted via the link at the bottom of this slide, the multifamily affordability verification application, which is a seamless docs site, and you will be asked to upload that information. So to please make sure that the buildings that you're working with are aware of these requirements if they are interested in applying for as affordable housing, that they must be able to verify that. And they must be able to verify that before the purchase order can be issued. Again, because the cost share amount is based on affordability, that must be verified before the purchase order is issued. I'm going to pass the next slide on to Adam.
So the funding for these projects depends on the size of the project. So large projects are those that spend more than $1 million a year on energy, and then small projects are those that spend less than $1 million a year on energy. So the maximum NYSERDA contribution is $200,000 for large projects and $100,000 for small projects. So if it's a 75% cost share project, that's NYSERDA's portion. So the total cost can be higher than that. If it's a 100% cost share, then they're one and the same. There are two potential bonus payments in the 2 years following the end of the engagement. So when NYSERDA's cost shared engagement ends, that begins the first year. If the OsEM is retained in that year and an additional 1% energy savings is identified or implemented, there's a $7,000 bonus payment or $5,000 for small projects. And then that same process repeats 1 year following that. So the total maximum funding from NYSERDA would be $214,000 or $110,000. That's not per year, that's per total engagement. So the funds can only be used for the on-site energy manager and technical assistance support included in the contract or the scope of work. It can't be used towards implementation or equipment purchase or any other labor outside of that effort. So the role can be fulfilled by a permanent hire, consultant, or a hybrid of the two. If you're using a consultant to fulfill the role, you have the option of having the consultant be the applicant on the project, in which case they would get paid directly by NYSERDA. If the customer is the applicant and they're paying a consultant, then, or either way, if the customer is the applicant, then they would pay the on-site energy manager and then submit a request for reimbursement to NYSERDA. And then, as Maria covered, affordable projects are eligible for 100% cost share, and market rate projects for 75% total cost share, up to the cap. back to you, Maria, I think, or Mira.
Back to me, yeah. Maria, if you could, yeah, great. Okay, so we're going to take a look at attachment A, which is the application, in the next few slides here. So as Adam just mentioned, the customer or the consultant can be the applicant on the project, but whoever is the applicant, the payments from NYSERDA will go directly to the applicant. This application must be submitted to the Onsite Energy Manager email address, along with supporting documentation, and the scope of work, budget, and concept, and the information about what those contain are also listed under the resources on OsEM, on the OsEM top page of the NYSERDA website. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, buildings or portfolio of buildings can apply. So you would just want to have that information on this section of the application. The primary facility name should be the owner information and the best point of contact for the project. And this is also where you would indicate if the multifamily property is affordable or a market rate property. Okay, for this section, you're going to indicate the number of buildings that are in your portfolio, and then the aggregate utility information. And like I mentioned earlier, there is limited funding that's available for multifamily properties that are not paying into the system benefits charge. So you can keep that in mind when applying. And the property or portfolio cannot already have a dedicated OsEM, because we do review the resume with the submission of the application of the person that is being suggested. So it can't be something that's already an ongoing engagement. And then the final section of the application, where the signatures are, the applicant is going to be the party who is reimbursed by NYSERDA, but you must have signatures from the customer regardless of who the applicant is. If the consultant wishes to receive that payment directly, they should sign the applicant's section. And if the customer wants to receive the payment directly, they should sign the applicant's section. Important to note that the customer is the building owner. And if there's any sort of representative relationship, we would need confirmation that would confirm that there's a representative relationship taking place there. Okay, that's all for me. I think it might be back to you, Maria.
Oh, it's me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go through just in some more detail the rest of the application documents that are required. So there's an on-site energy manager concept, attachment B, which is required with the application. So this kind of gives a narrative overview of what you intend to do in the engagement. So it'll include existing conditions, brief, on what type of facility it is, and as well as the current state of energy management. So what does it look like now? What environment are you bringing the energy manager into? OsEM integration covers how the OsEM will work at the building or will work with the building or buildings, who they'll report to, who's overseeing the engagement, who is fulfilling the OsEM role, what type of support they'll have there, as well as a history or just some experience in energy project implementation, just something that would kind of outline why the engagement would be successful. Next slide, please. So then there's a scope of work, which is going to ultimately be the agreement between NYSERDA and the applicant, so the contract. This will probably look a lot more like the requirements document. So, there's some leeway in how you prepare the scope of work, but all of these required tasks and deliverables have to be in it. So this just goes over everything that we expect the on-site energy manager to do during the engagement. They can do more than this, and they can have a broader focus. And a lot of these items are not, they're not specifically saying investigate the specific system or come up with these specific energy conservation measures. So they're very general. So the owner and the on-site energy manager can kind of direct the focus, but we do want all of these tasks accomplished during the engagement. There's also a schedule, which will outline deliverables. There's a quarterly deliverable, as well as a final deliverable. Also the length of the engagement, the weekly commitment of the on-site energy manager, which has to be at least 20 hours a week and up to 40 hours a week, and then the budget, which I'm going to get to next. Next slide, please. So this is a budget template. You can modify it if you need, but we do want to see all of the information that's listed here. So this breaks out all of the required tasks. So we'll want to know, estimated number of hours and the rate of the on-site energy manager. And then that'll all add up to total at the bottom, and then NYSERDA's cost share will be will cap out. You can have an engagement that goes more than like $266,000, for example, which would be the amount that you would hit the NYSERDA cap. Our funding will stop at 200,000, so the higher you get above 266,000, the effective cost share will drop below 75%. But if the customer wants to proceed with an engagement, that's no issue. There's also bonus payments shown on the budget as well. You'll also submit the resume for the on-site energy manager that's being proposed, as long as it should show relevant qualifications, just any experience that supports their ability to carry out the on-site energy manager role. If the on-site energy manager has not yet been identified, for example, if it's going to be a permanent hire of the customer and they have not hired the person yet, instead of the resume, you would submit the job description that you're using to solicit applicants to fulfill the OsEM role, which we would then approve the application package based on that. But then when you do select an on-site energy manager, you would also have to submit that to NYSERDA for review and approval before proceeding. And then only for projects that are using a consultant to fulfill the on-site energy manager role, we also ask for a letter of commitment or a statement of commitment of some sort from the ownership upper management, just that they're aware and in support of the engagement. Next slide, please. So the deliverables for the program are on a quarterly basis. So at the end of the first quarter, there's an energy management plan. A simple way to think about this would be kind of like the first half of an energy audit or an energy study, where you're outlining the existing conditions, what kind of systems are present, what the energy use is, historic energy use, and analysis of that. So that's a one-time deliverable, although it can be updated throughout the engagement if appropriate. And then each quarter, there's a quarterly report, which a simple way to think of that would be the second half of an energy study, where you would be just including like a basic narrative of what happened during that quarter, and then any energy efficiency measures or initiatives that were identified in that quarter, along with their estimated energy savings, cost savings, installation costs, as well as any supporting calculations to support the numbers. There's also a project summary sheet that goes along with the quarterly report. It's similar to the FlexTech project summary sheet. It just lists all the measures with the savings. And then at the end of the engagement, however many quarters it is, so it could be 1 year, it could be 2 years, and you'll have 8 quarterly reports. The final report is just really a compilation of all the previous quarters, so it will be inclusive of everything that was identified and implemented during the course of the engagement. So that would conclude the deliverables during the active engagement. Once that ends, when you're in the bonus period, as I mentioned before, there are two bonus periods for the 2 years following the end of the engagement. There's a bonus report, which is really a request to receive the payment that you submit 1 year after the end of the engagement. That would just say, we retained the on-site energy manager, we identified these 2 new things, or we installed these few things from the original engagement. These are the savings. They're 1%, at least 1% of total energy use. Upon approval, we would then pay out the bonus payment. If you don't retain the OsEM, or you do, and maybe for some reason they don't identify any additional savings, you don't have to submit the bonus report. There's no obligation. If you don't submit the bonus report in the first year, you can still submit it in the second year. Next slide, please. And that's it. So if you have any questions, we'll answer any questions that came in during the webinar, but you can follow up by emailing onsiteenergymanager@nyserda.ny.gov. That's an actively monitored inbox, and that's also where you would submit application packages and application documents. You can also go on the website. It's linked here. I think we'll probably share this to attendees, and then this webinar will be posted on the website as well as the Q&A. Maria?
Thanks so much for that, Adam. Yes. So we'll go through the questions that came up in the chat. The first one was to define a portfolio, please, and just to share that the portfolio refers to a group of buildings. So talking about just not one singular building, but a group of buildings. The next question is, if some buildings are affordable and some are not, how is the portfolio awarded? Adam, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So if you have a mixed portfolio of affordable and market rate buildings, we can cost share it like based on the percentage of breakdown. We haven't completely, I guess, determined like what the breakout would be or what it would be based on, but you can submit a mixed portfolio and have a single on-site energy manager covering it and get a 100% cost share for the portion of it that is affordable and a 75% cost share for the portion that isn't. If you have any questions, like just reach out and we'll take a look at the portfolio and we'll figure out how best to cost share it.
Thanks, Adam. Excuse me. The next question is the annual spend, the facility consumption, base building only, or does it account for tenants too? So we'll confirm this, but this should be inclusive of tenant accounts as well, because this is accounting for the entire building. And for multifamily buildings, that is typically apartments are oftentimes take up the majority, if not all of the building. So that would be inclusive of tenants. But if you have questions, specific questions, please email the email address on the slide. The next statement is just portfolio buildings of that owner manager is the project. If there is more than one building, yes, it's a portfolio is more than one building. Next up is the question, if the applicant is a consultant, can the title, rate, or hours be spread over more than one person from the consultant's team? If yes, with what constraints? Adam, I'll let you take that, please.
So the short answer is yes, but with limits. So we want the on-site energy manager to be an individual, and they have to have at least 75% of the hours. You can have an additional support person to support the on-site energy manager for the remaining 25% of the hours. And the purpose of that is, the purpose of the program is to demonstrate the value of an individual, of an energy manager for an organization, both to the participating organization and to the market in general. So we have other programs that focus on like a team-based study approach, but this program is really trying to demonstrate the value of an individual responsible for energy at an organization. So yes, you can spread it over two people, with a single person being the on-site energy manager and the other person being a support person.
Awesome, thank you. There was another question. We own and manage multiple entities. Some entities have multiple addresses. Can we submit multiple entities with multiple entities as a portfolio? It sounds like you're asking if, go ahead, sorry, Adam.
Yeah, assuming you're speaking as a single owner of multiple facilities and multiple, like maybe they have separate ownership, like LLCs or something, and then you own all of them, we would consider you the customer and then those all buildings in your portfolio. So I don't see any issue with what you're describing, at least if I have that right. Okay, sounds like I do. Great.
Okay. Great. There's a question, how is this version of the program any different than the last version of the program?
I can answer that one as well. It's meaning the last version that was open to multifamily. The only way it's different is that there's been some minor like tweaks to program terms and rules, but you mostly just to run the program more smoothly. The only major difference is that affordable multifamily is now eligible for a 100% cost share. Otherwise, it's the same general program that existed a few years ago when it was briefly open to multifamily, and that has been running for 6 years for industrial and commercial. I can answer the next question that just came in, Maria, also.
Okay.
There's no program manual, but there's a PON, a program summary on our website that has everything you would need to know about the program. As far as application process, we have those guidelines on our website. So the OsEM concept requirements, the scope of work requirements that will pretty much tell you exactly what we're asking for in the application. But in general, any questions about how the program works or anything like that, it's all in the summary, or you could just reach out to us anytime if you have a specific question.
There's another question. Is there a limit to the number of applications one owner can submit?
I can answer that one too. There is, well, not a hard limit, but after the first 3 applications, NYSERDA reserves the right to limit the cost share. So we've typically limited it to 50% after we've had 3 projects with the same owner organization. The reasoning behind that is, as I said before, the intent of the program is to demonstrate the value. So after 3 NYSERDA cost shared or fully funded engagements, if they have to be affordable, if the value is not demonstrated such that the owner organization thinks it's worth it to have an energy manager at cost, then there's like an assumption that there's a diminishing return there.
Thanks, Adam. Those are all the questions that I see. Give 1 more minute in case anybody's still typing. And as a reminder, we're to Adam's point, we're going to be pulling together all these Q&A questions and answers. We're going to be pulling together the deck, and we'll have the recording available on the OsEM NYSERDA site. We should hope that have that available for everyone's review within a week or 2. And thank you so much, everybody, for participating today and attending the webinar.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not seeing anything else. So with that, we'll call it a day. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks so much, Adam and Mira.